it is very sad to announce that we lost our beloved teacher, Professor A.V. Champakamalini, and on 12th of October, and she had a special connection with the Department of Molecular Biology. She took classes on developmental biology for us until 2018, and the entire department and the college mourns her death deeply. So before moving on to the talk, let me quickly introduce our speaker. Professor Subhash Chandra Lakhotia is a renowned scientist of the country in the fly research and also in the field of education and teaching. And he is currently the lifelong distinguished professor at Banaras Hindu University, and also served distinguished fellow, INSA senior scientist. He is the fellow of all three academies of India, and he is Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar awardee of 1989. And he has served as the member of many editorial boards like Current Science, Journal of Bioscience, RNA Biology, Cell Stress, and Chaperones, Annals of Neurosciences. His research work or research area mainly focuses on the studies of developmental roles and regulation of non-coding HSR omega, heat shock, and few other novel genes in Drosophila, using cell biological, molecular, and recombinant DNA approaches. Roles of these genes in modulating apoptosis and neurodegeneration in Drosophila models of human diseases and cellular effects of certain Ayurvedic formulations using fly model are also being studied in his lab. So Ayurvedic biology is a recent area of interest. He has more than 300 publications, a specialty being all of his publications are available in the public domain, which can be accessed through ResearchGate website. And he has written outstanding editorials in Current Science on the burning issues of Indian scientific education, and especially teaching and research in biological sciences, and also research in the current state of research in India in biological sciences. Currently, he is also the part of the editorial board of proceedings of Indian National Academy of Sciences. And I think over to you, sir. And we look forward for your engaging talk today.
Let me see, how do I share my slides again?
Yes, sir, you can share now.
Is my slide visible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good morning to all the listeners, and I'm thankful to Yuvaraja's College for inviting me, asking me to talk on this important issue, the basic research and ethics in sciences. Is there a problem with the audio? Okay. Now, the topic that has been that I'm going to talk about today is something very important, particularly for young students, young researchers who are entering, and also, of course, for the faculty as to what kind of research they need to do, what is ethical, what is correct, and so on and so forth. What I plan to do is this, that after about 35-40 minutes, I'll give a break for questions for the topic that we are talking then. And then after those questions are over, we'll go to the second part of where I talk about the publication part of it, about Indian journals and what are the parameters that we need to assess for promotions and so on. So let's go ahead. And the higher education institutions, you see, typically we think they're places of learning, but we must remember universities and also colleges are not just for transfer of knowledge from teacher to the student, but they are also places where new knowledge is created through research. And therefore, research and teaching has to go hand in hand at all institutes of higher learning. Now, what is research? Now, this is something we need to understand. A unique feature of mankind is that we can wonder, we can ask, we can be curious. But more important and most important is that we can wonder at our own ability to wonder. That we want to try to understand our own brain, which many animals have curiosity. Actually, every living system is curious about its environment, but their curiosity is more of a one-way process. But humans have a different capacity that we can even question why we question, and that's an important part to understand what is research. And why this happened was that almost all living systems have a system of communication through chemicals. Animals also have through sound, but humans have perfected this sound communication much better by evolving very well-defined spoken and written languages. And once we had these, particularly the written languages, that made a difference in our society. The knowledge gained by one generation could be available to many, many generations later on, because they didn't have to be present there to speak, but their written things could be available. And that's what has been instrumental in progress in our civilization from the primitive man to current times. And along with this language development, the curiosity and self-driven efforts to satisfy the curiosity lie at the root of research. Why we research it? Because we remain curious. And this curiosity is not that somebody asks us to be curious, it is built in our biological system. And therefore research then becomes more systematized and involves systematic and creative investigations in any domain of knowledge. It could be a philosophical question, it could be a materialistic question, it could be anything in this universe that can be perceived by our senses. We can be doing research in all these areas. And research has owners and recipients. Owners is those who carry on the recipients, carry on the research, and recipients, those who read about it, those who learn about it, they are the recipients. And there's a relationship between owners and recipients, and that's where issues of ethics come in, which I'll talk later. In scientific research, there is a certain method that has come now, that there's a systematic and methodical process where we use well-defined protocol to disprove or support the hypothesis or answer a specific question. Finding a definitive answer is the central goal of any experimental or theoretical research. That means, based on our present knowledge, we ask a question and immediately we also give a possible explanation. That's what we call as a hypothesis. And when we do research, research is not to prove a hypothesis, but to see if we can disprove it. If we cannot disprove it, then we accept it. But if it is disproven, then that hypothesis is gone and we develop a new hypothesis. And this is how research becomes a continuing process. And it includes literature reviews of past research, what questions need to be answered, because only when we know what we know, we can ask what we do not know yet. But this is true, of course, in all disciplines, scientific, economic, or historical, which require interpretation and an opinion to be provided by the researcher. Researcher is not just presenting a set of data, but is also giving an interpretation that what does that data mean, what are the limitations of that data. And therefore, all research acts on knowledge base and lets us know what we still. This is an important point. That it's I won't say that because I researched this thing, I have known this. What I have known is what I still do not know, and that's what is the driving force in research. Now, why we undertake research? What simplest is curiosity. Human beings, as I said, even all living systems are curious. Human beings have enormous curiosity. In fact, sometimes we can think about the youngest of our age, a 3-month, 6-month toddler is the best researcher, is curious about everything, wants to know, wants to feel, wants to understand. And as they grow up, their curiosity keeps on increasing based on what they've gained so far. And so it becomes a continuingly deeper and deeper curiosity that we go on. That's the primary reason why anybody undertakes research. Then, of course, there is another region which is more pragmatic, career prospects, because if I want a better job, I want to get a job, I want to promotion, I want to get a social status, and that's where, because if you've done research, we can get all those. Third, and unfortunate part is nothing else to do, because they're in a job, they are not written, but they have to do, and that's where comes a major problem in Why sometimes the quality and the ethical issues become important? Because the people who do research because there's nothing else to do. We should only those who should come in research who have real innate curiosity and who have to worry about career prospects. Because research is a vocation, it's not a job. It's not a 10 to 5 a job that, okay, you go at 10 and come back at 5 and research is done. It's a continuous way of life. It has to, it's a 24-hour activity. And research is a self-driven activity, self-motivated, because your mind, your heart is asking a question. And that's where you're agitated because you don't get an answer, therefore you keep on trying to seek an answer. That's the self-motivation part of it. And then once we get something, the typical in contemporary times, the fashion is that we publish our findings in research journals or somewhere else so that the remaining public, remaining people who are interested can know about this. And that's where comes the question of ownership and question of recipients. So the larger peer group, our contemporaries who are interested in that area become our recipients of research, and the people who have carried on that research and claimed their discoveries are the owners of that research. Ownership provides a sense of satisfaction and achievement because if you found something, you are very happy that you have found it. And when you share it, you feel happy that, okay, you are sharing it. But why should we share? Because the sharing makes more and more people be aware of it, not only your contribution, but also they can take advantage of what you have found out for their own further activities. And of course, then there is another reason, as I said, because they require academic authorities need to assess us, to quantify the creative capability of a person, and that's research output becomes a major factor in education of higher institutions or research institutions, that how much we have published, what we have published becomes important. Now then there's a question of basic and applied research, and this is something which is quite contested to whether basic research is needed, applied research is more important, and what it is. Basic research is primarily curiosity-driven activity to understand what, why, and how about some phenomenon or material that I'm interested in. Just I want to know what that phenomenon, why it is so, how does it operate. These are basic curiosity. We just want to know why and how and so on. Whereas applied research takes on from this knowledge which somebody has found out and then makes use of that to for human benefit, economic benefit to researcher and society. And that's why we call it applied or translational, that we translate the knowledge into some product, into some economic benefit, into some process, and so on. Now, both of them need money. Investment in basic research generates new knowledge at the outcome. That's it. It's not the money that is being generated, it's just the knowledge is being generated. That's the wealth created by basic research. Whereas applied research is expected to generate more money than what was invested. And that's the profit part. And that's one important difference between basic and applied research. That basic research is knowledge for knowledge's sake. Applied research is knowledge for monetary benefits and more convenience to the society. Now, this question has often been asked, do we need basic research? What has happened today is, as our knowledge base has expanded, there are more and more powerful approaches, but to make use of those powerful approaches, more money is needed. And therefore, research is becoming more expensive, with basic or applied. And being more expensive comes a question that a country like India, which is not so rich as many other countries are, do we need to spend money in basic research? And this has been a question which is being more frequently discussed in these years. Because in fact, there is a greater emphasis that everybody should do applied or translational research so that we can get a wealth out of our knowledge, which is good. But then, should it happen at the cost of basic research, or what should be promoted? That's the question. The neglecting basic research is a self-defeating step. If we neglect basic research, we will be in a more problem, because basic research satisfies the innate human curiosity, essential for human existence. Only because we are curious, we are human. Otherwise, we could be any other animal. Even animals are curious, but human curiosity goes beyond them, and that's one of the basic reasons why we are different from all other animal systems, living systems. So that's one primary reason to be curious, and basic research is primarily to satisfy that curiosity. Now, basic research trains young minds to sharpen their curiosity and develop scientific temper, essential for society's progress. Because the scientific temper is a rational way of thinking, analysis, not accepting something just because someone else says it, by questioning. And unless we learn to question, our society doesn't progress well. And new knowledge generated by basic research only opens a gate to path leading to applied research. If we now have no new knowledge, we can't go ahead to applied research. I'll take some examples where, for example, recombinant DNA, which is so much in fashion today, everybody wants to do molecular biology. But let's look at the genesis of these techniques. All key processes, steps involved in recombinant DNA technology were discovered by curiosity-driven basic research rather than any direct applied research. For example, when key enzymes like DNA polymerase, DNA ligase, restriction nucleases were discovered in 1950s and 1960s, nobody had ever thought that, okay, we'll use them for something else. It was just to know how is DNA replicated. How, once they know that there are pieces of fragments, what join them together. DNA ligases were discovered. Restriction to nucleus because of the phenomenon of bacteria that a bacteriophage can sometimes multiply in a bacterium, sometimes it cannot. And so that's what the restriction modification system, and people looking at them discovered that there is a set of enzymes which are called restriction nucleases. Likewise, the whole technique of DNA reassociation hybridization, which lies at the base of recombinant DNA research, was again just to understand how double-stranded DNA behaves, how it can denature, how it can renature, those basic studies. Study of plasmids and bacteriophages just out of basic curiosity. Why plasmids exist? How do they multiply? How do they get into the system? What are bacteriophages? How do they multiply? They were used for basic research, but once we knew about that basic knowledge, we could put all these things together into recombinant DNA technology. Transposons, which have become so important now, and then more recently, of course, everybody knows that this is Nobel laureates, Carpenter and Doudna, worked on CRISPR-Cas technology. But they pursued it, not that they wanted to find out a system whereby they can do genome editing, but they're just curious in certain bacteria, certain systems, how does DNA get cut at precise places? And that curiosity led them to discover this CRISPR-Cas system, and which now has become a world-changing genome editing technology. And the point here is, if these basic research were not done, we wouldn't have been where we are. And this is unless we go ahead and look at more and more diverse processes in nature. We know very little about nature. We know very little about biological systems. Unless we know more about them, we will not be able to discover newer methods, more efficient methods, and so on. Similarly, computers and artificial intelligence, which has become absolutely common thing today. For young generation, computers are no more something different. But how were computers discovered? Not that somebody wanted to develop a machine and so on and so forth, but just mathematics, material science studies, and so on, and then developing ways to calculate faster. We have come to the present stage where we can talk of artificial intelligence, because we learn so much about our own neural networks, our own brain analysis, and that's what has given rise to the whole branch of artificial intelligence. Similarly, the space exploration. We can look at various planets and so on, because long back, scientists like Galileo and Newton were just curious. Why does Earth rotate around Sun, or Sun rotates around something, why they are held in place? Laws of motion were discovered, and like this, step by step, things happened, and we got to where we are today. Same thing happens in chemical industry, material science industry, just basic studies on chemicals and so on. Healthcare, because we understood about life sciences, we learned about human anatomy, we learned about physiology, we can today talk of drug discoveries and so on, all stemming primarily from basic research. And that's where comes the important point, that converting knowledge into technology requires imagination and interdisciplinary skills. And this is where our training has to be interdisciplinary. We can't just train students in one discipline and expect them to develop good technology. Technology requires knowledge of not only one's own subject, but also other subjects, how to convert that knowledge into something that we can call technology. And therefore, high quality basic research is essential for India's growth because knowledge is wealth and it can generate commercial value. New technologies require new knowledge, and that's what we have to keep on developing newer technologies. Then only they are advanced in knowledge, and human health, human wealth becomes better. What has happened in India is that because we didn't develop new knowledge, new technology on our own, we have depended on borrowed technology, which often is outdated. And that's where India has run into a problem. Because technology which is developed at one place is usually adapted to local conditions. If we import technology that works in Europe and America, may not work adequately well to suit our Indian conditions, our rural conditions, our varied climatic conditions. There can be various kinds of problems. And that's where we need to think about. I wrote an article about this, that will new emphasis on privately funded applied research really make India industrially sound and knowledge economy? I think not, unless we keep pace with our basic research, unless we keep on discovering new things where we claim our ownership and therefore we claim them to utilize the way we want to utilize, rather than somebody else discover things for us and then utilize. We may not even be ready to understand what has been discovered unless we are doing our own basic research. And to do basic research, we need to inculcate sense of originality and inquisitiveness in students. Because one thing we must understand about education, a child who has started learning alphabets doesn't have an empty brain that we can go on filling knowledge. No, brain is not an empty vessel. Brain works by interaction. As we share knowledge, knowledge increases, the thinking power increases, curiosity increases, and curiosity can never be satisfied. Nobody can say, okay, I've learned everything and there's nothing more. There's always something more. And that's what we need to introduce to our students, young minds, that they need to remain curious. Unfortunately, the way we are teaching these days, we are not promoting originality and inquisitiveness, because we present information as a commodity, that this is information, teacher provides information, student takes information without a questioning mind, and that's where it comes a problem. And that's why many of our students, they may have degrees, but they are not appropriate for a given job because they have lost the inquiring mind. Yes, education system is a problem, but also the students also have to realize that they need to keep their burning inquiry system on all the time. That fire must never be extinguished. Inculcation of sense of originality and inquisitiveness, which are at the root of any research, must be catalyzed and promoted during education. Students must remain conscious of this point, that they have to keep on learning continuously. And in all this process, ethical practice become important. Be it teaching, be it learning, be it research, ethics becomes very, very critical in all these situations. Now, what is ethics and why is important research? It's very difficult to define ethics. In a general way, ethics is a set of moral principles of behavior formulated by human societies to maintain the defined social order. Now, there's no common behavior, there's no common social order, there are no commonalities in different human societies, each has its own principle, its own way of living. Therefore, ethical principles can also vary from society to society, from discipline to discipline. The scope now in research, why it has become so important today, because one is the number of people involved in research, number of laboratory, number of personnel, number of institutions have increased exponentially, and that has resulted in more competition. And unfortunately, human mind, whenever there's a competition, tends to find a shortcut. And this shortcut, because the research output measures our accomplishments, for our career prospects and recognition, and in the crowd that we have, everybody wants to move ahead of next one, and that's where comes the question of competition, unethical practices, and so on. Therefore, in order to maintain integrity, research community evolved its own set of conduct rules. This now I'm talking about the research ethics, which also apply partly to teaching, learning, but more to the research, where research is conducted, where research is communicated. that we need to have our own set of conduct rules to safeguard against unwarranted behavior of individual researchers that may negatively impact the profession and our society. Basically, if put in the laws of thermodynamics context, ethical conduct reduces entropy of society. If you have no rules, everybody is free to do things as they want, and that will disrupt society. Same thing, if you don't have ethical conduct, the way we behave in our research, academic atmosphere will get to ground state of disorder, and that will be no good. That's why we have ethical conduct provisions made. Now, now let's talk about the research output, generation and dissemination of new knowledge, and that's where, as I said earlier, researcher is the owner of new knowledge. And this new knowledge we need to share with others, one, for our self-satisfaction that yes, I created this knowledge, as a social responsibility, because what I've learned, my friends, my other people, contemporary people should also know so that they can make use of that knowledge. And third, for its application wealth generation. One is you get something new, you want everyone else to know about it, and they are happy to know that so that they can understand the phenomenon better. A third approach is making use of the knowledge. You can make an applied component of it and thereby generate wealth and better health and social conditions. In current practice, research publications are the major mode of dissemination of new research output. That's where we communicate our research. Good old days, people did research. After many years, they wrote a book or something, and it was a slow dissemination. But today, it's very fast. In internet era, what I discovered today can be known to the whole world by tomorrow. It has become very fast. And as was stated, that a researcher, a disciplinary scientist is to know, to discover, and to publish. And that's what justified this statement that we need to publish, but in that process, we need to follow ethical principles. Now, contemporary research is more formalized and an integral part of academic activity in institutes of higher education and research. Everywhere we are asked to do research. India wants to have its universities, institutions in higher ranking, and research becomes an important component there. Quality of education and quality of research output. And because of huge career prospects, pressures to publish research outputs, unethical behavior on parts of authors, journal editors, peer reviewers, and publishers is unfortunately becoming more common. And that's something that we need to worry about. And that's where one of the efforts that in the country we are trying to do is to make young people and even established scientists more conscious of ethical behavior, ethical practices, what are international standard practices, and what are expected of us. We all should be careful about it. Now, how do we publish? There can be several ways. One is a book publication, which can be single authored, multiple authored, or edited with multiple authors. Then a common and more frequently known way of publication is in research journals, sometimes conference proceedings that we have a meeting and then meeting proceedings are published as a separate book or a separate issue of a journal. Or more recently, this has also become preprint archives. I'll talk about what is the preprint archives a little later, but this is becoming very, very important and very useful way of communicating one's new results. Now, in all this process, authors, journal editors, peer reviewers, and publishers are collectively involved in the act of publication of research output. And obviously, all this publication provides the essential building block in the development of comprehensive and reliable network of knowledge, because only when you are published, others get to know about it and their knowledge increases. I'll talk about each of these steps, what kind of principles we are required, but then each step has its own way of ethical principle. There are code of conducts, do's and don'ts, which we should understand. Now, for example, the first is authorship in publication. Internationally, scientists have made an organization called Committee on Publication Ethics, which is a kind of a United Nations offshoot, whose web address is given here. Anybody can open this. And in fact, it is designed that every researcher, every editor, every publisher follows these guidelines here. In fact, today, for a journal to be recognized, they have to state that they adhere to the COPE guidelines. Similarly, for author, it has given guidelines which we need to understand. Now, first guideline, who can be an author of a paper? And this is the COPE guideline defined that to be an author, one must contribute in at least one or more of the following in that publication. Either conceiving the design or the question, that's first part, acquisition, analysis, and or interpretation of data generated, collected during the work, drafting, editing of the work, revising it critically, and thus contributing intellectually. There may be somebody author who has not done neither conceived the idea nor collected data, but while writing or revising it has provided inputs. They also can be an author in that publication. Publication can be a single author paper where all research and work related to that publication was carried out only by the author, who bears all the responsibilities. But more often we have multi-author papers. This is the common practice today, necessary to clearly identify contributions of each author. Now, in a multi-author paper, many journals now ask what is the specific contribution of a given author, why that person should be an author, what kind of work they have contributed. Somebody can write, okay, this person contributed only to interpretation, to discussion, to providing meaning of something, or a small part of the experiment, or whatever it is, that should be defined. But all authors have certain common responsibilities. One is to be accountable for all aspects of the work. Let's say there are 5 authors in a given paper, and author X says, I do not know what the YZ authors have done. I've done this work. No. Author X must also know what authors Y and Z have also done, A or B have done. So everybody should know, be familiar. They may not be answerable to all the aspects of the work because they are not expertise, but they should at least know who has done what. Then when the final version which is submitted to the journal or a conference or something, each one must read and approve that, yeah, this is what we agree. And each author should know specific contribution of each co-author. See, these are common responsibilities of any author in a multi-author paper. Now then comes a question, which is a very tricky question. A student who works for PhD is required to make certain publications. Now, what is the status of supervisor in that? Should supervisor be an author? Should a student be an author? Should both of them be authors? Should there be third authors, fourth authors, and so on? These depend on what contribution each one has. Sometimes it is possible supervisor may decide not to include his or her name as an author. Because if the supervisor thinks the student has carried out most of the work and it was only the supervisor's overall guidance that were required, student may agree that all right, the student can publish that work on just student's name, supervisor may not be there. But generally, the trend is because supervisor-student interaction is very different. Student and supervisor both are authors in paper, but only student can also publish provided supervisor has agreed to this. Supervisor has to permit. A student cannot just go away and publish without knowledge of the supervisor. That will be unethical. But while student can publish independent paper, supervisor must not publish doctoral work of a student without student's name. If that result is published, student's name must come in. This is absolutely essential. Now, what has happened in recent years is a student has carried out work, included that in the thesis, but when a paper comes out of that, there are multiple authors. Question is, what did these authors contribute? If they contributed, how can that whole work be part of that student thesis? Because that student thesis is part of its examination. The student claims it's done all by me. If it's all done by that student, why should there be other authors? If they are just there for some of the reasons which I'll talk later on, then that becomes unethical. They must have a reason to be author there, and if they have a reason to be author there, then that must also be stated in student's thesis as well. Then there is another kind of authorship where we give somebody an author because we think that by making that author will be obliged and will do something good for us. This kind of guest authorship is equal to giving a bribe and therefore unethical. Then there are other conditions where a head of the department or a principal or a director of an institute or a section claims authorship just because of their official position. Because they say they provided money. Providing money is their responsibility. They have not put in any intellectual input there. Therefore, keeping their name in the authorship is unethical. The other thing may be, okay, I keep my friend's name in author, and my friend, when he publishes or she publishes, will do the same thing for me, so that each one's number of publication goes high. This is unethical. Because publication, as I said, you must have contributed something intellectually to be an author in any publication. Then there is the worst situation is that there are professional paper writers, manuscript sprung up very large number. Something they do good is that people may not be very familiar good in the language, and therefore these professional writers can help the researchers present the results in a better way. But the bad part is that I may simply pay money to someone, write a research paper based on fake data because of plagiarized data, copied papers, and this is what is published in predatory bogus journals. I just pay something and get a paper written. This is surrogate authorship is unethical. The general responsibilities of authors are very important to understand. One is originality of data and no plagiarism. That means the data that we generate must not have been copied from somewhere else. Must not have been neither the idea nor the actual data. Plagiarism can include idea plagiarism, it can include data plagiarism, it can include text plagiarism. Text plagiarism is much more common, that will be just lift sentences, paragraphs from some publication and put in our paper as if we are stating it. Actually, now the things have become so complicated that even if one sentence is verbatim from somewhere else, the software will immediately put a flag that this is copied. Now, whether that is copied for a purpose, whether that is copied with a credit given to the person, is something that they really will have to identify. But plagiarism has become very common. I'm sure most students, unfortunately, are doing it now when they assess assignments and so on. They simply think because something is available on the internet, it's free. It's freely available, but we need to provide credit to those who have placed that information on the net. It's not just that I can take it and pass it on as my idea or my writing. No, that's plagiarism, and that's bad. The good record keeping and maintenance of data is very important. That we maintain our data very well on every day, what we have done. See, this is something that we are often missing. The research students do not maintain their daily logbook, what they have actually done. Now, one may say, why it is necessary? It becomes necessary for two reasons. One, you yourself know what has been done, what you have to do today. Second, and more important, where it becomes important from a legal point of view is, supposing 2 years later, somebody questions that data. Was this done? How was it done? Was there a possibility? Now, if you no record, one cannot explain what has happened. And this can sometimes result in very severe punishments as well. Because then the whole thing will be said that's all fabricated. One never did that kind of study because there is no written record. So this is an important point, that a good record keeping and middle data on daily basis must be followed. Honesty, objectivity, and integrity in experimental design, data analysis, data interpretation, reporting data, results, methods, procedures everywhere. Because see, science on a research is actually a pursuit of truth. And if we go to that pursuit of truth by adopting false methods, obviously we cannot get at the truth, and we can not only create problems for ourselves, but create problems for all others who are using that kind of data, that kind of information that you say you have generated. Equally important is openness and sharing ideas. See, any new research, any new development doesn't come just by individual mind. It is more often by discussion. And therefore, that discussion should happen without undue kind of secrecy. But then at the same time, we must respect intellectual property. My ideas are also intellectual property. That's intellectual property. It may not be counted in terms of rupees or dollars or something, but it's counted as intellectual property, and therefore, if I hear from somebody a suggestion, I must give credit for that this suggestion came from XYZ, because that's the respect for intellectual property. Then there is another thing is copyright agreement. When you publish something, because the publishers earn money out of it, they have a copyright agreement that we agree to certain conditions. They have the responsibilities, we have responsibilities, and this copyright agreement must be read carefully by each author, each publisher. Sometimes there can be conditions which are not good. One should ask about it, why should that be there, and then discuss and get it settled down. The other important responsibility for an author is that if somebody else wants to make use of a published material, then they can reuse it, provided they give due credit. That's what part of the copyright agreement, that they must give credit that this is data, this material is taken from so-and-so's work, and that you must be agreeable. Then there is a issue of confidentiality between authors, peer reviewers, and the journal. For example, when I write a paper, submit a journal, it is not yet known to public. All that will know about it is the authors, the editor, and the editor consults some experts who we call as peer reviewers. Now, if the peer reviewers get that information, misuse it for their own purpose, or pass on that information to somebody unauthorizedly, that is unethical. And same applies to the editor, same applies to the author, that when they are publishing something, it is still being considered. They must not go to press and say we have discovered this, because it has not yet been published, and therefore that's the confidentiality that must be maintained. Then they need responsible publication. I can't just publish something fake. People have done it, and then they have to withdraw it, and they have to suffer. There can be a legal penalty, there can be moral penalty, there can be disrespect, and so on and so forth. So publication must be responsible. Then publication, the public announcement of new results must also be done carefully. Just because I think I've discovered something, I must not go to press and say we have discovered this. Because unless it has been established, and that's where peer review becomes important, that the peer reviewers are people who are of equal standing, who are experts in the given area. They have looked at the data, they have looked at the interpretation, and they are satisfied that the data have been collected properly, have been presented properly, interpreted properly, then only that goes to publication. So one must not rush to make a public announcement through press that we have discovered something which may not stand the time of the day later on. Similarly, we can't submit a research paper to two places simultaneously. No, never. We can submit a paper only at one journal till that journal rejects, accepts, or modifies, takes a decision. We cannot submit the same work to another publication. Similarly, same study which is published today, 5 years later, I cannot republish it, or I publish a part of it now and a part later on. No, that's also unethical. Many journals ask the authors to suggest names of scientists or researchers who could review a manuscript. But sometimes we misuse this thing. We may give names of our friends who will say yes, and that's wrong. The worst part of this is that people have played fraud, and this is on record, and even in very good journals, that the author suggested names of great scientists, but their email address were their own email address. They generate a new email in name of that scientist. So the editor thinks, okay, this is a very good reviewer because that scientist is very well known, but actually the review comes back to the person who submitted the manuscript, and that's really bad. That must not be done. Then error correction, withdrawal or retraction of published paper. When do we retract? When do we withdraw a paper? If, let's say, even 10 years later, I discover that we erred in our data collection, we erred in data presentation, or there are some unethical practices that happened, there is no point in hiding that fact. It's much better, more respectful to publicly say, okay, this was wrong, we retract this finding. And many journals keep on publishing such papers, their retraction notices. Almost every journal, when you look at the contents, they carry retraction or withdrawal notices or matter of concern, where editors think that there's something wrong with the published paper. And this authors must agree that this is necessary activity to do. So reviewers, editors, publishers, they all have to adhere to ethical practices defined by Committee on Publication Ethics. It has very well detailed do's and don'ts for editors, peer reviewers, and publishers. There's a conflict of interest that supposing somebody, an editor sends a manuscript to me for review. Now, if the authors in that manuscript happen to be my relations, my students, my co-workers with whom I'm still collaborating, then there's a possible conflict of interest, and I should let this be known to the editor, that this is what it is. If the editor still think that I can review it, I should. Otherwise, it should not. I should not be a reviewer, because then there can be a biased interpretation possible. Then, as I said, that they must treat the information in the paper as confidential, and they must not indulge in idea like this. That means, I see some idea in a paper, I'm also working in that area, and I steal that idea and pass it on as my idea or do my own experiments while that paper is rejected. This is bad. This must not be done. Then there can be single blind review, double blind review system where the reviewer knows who the authors are, but the author do not know who the reviewers are. Double blind, where neither the reviewer nor the author know each other. The manuscript goes without author names. The author do not know who the reviewers is. That double blind. So in each system has its own confidentiality, and the review process, we must follow those procedures. And as a publication of research output is a social responsibility. To make it only a commercial benefit, that okay, by publishing a journal I'm going to earn money, is unethical, which is where predatory journals have come about. People who are collecting huge money or publishing someone else's work is considered unethical. That's what I was saying. Predatory journals who will publish anything on payment but without kind of any objective review is unethical. And unfortunately, India is at a very high level in publishing predatory articles of predatory journals, and we need to take strong measures about this. And of course, this is publishers, editors, reviewers have to be careful that author or they themselves are not doing any unethical misconduct. If that is there, it must be reported. It must be reported to the institutions where the authors are working, where the reviewers are working, and institutions are supposed to take appropriate steps in curbing such activities. The next important point comes is the relationship between a PhD supervisor and a PhD student. What kind of relationship they are? They are teacher-student, all right, but it's a different kind of relation, because doctorate degree is a training to learn to carry research independence. That's the primary purpose of a doctorate degree. When one earns a PhD degree, it is certified, or it is believed to be certified, that person now can work independently. And therefore, that means PhD training is a training period where they learn to carry research independently. It's not a typical teacher-student relationship. It's not that what happens in a classroom where there are 5 students or 100 students with a teacher, which is a group interaction. Here it is one-to-one interaction between the teacher and supervisor, student. There's one-to-one interaction, and they need to work in synergy, need to commonly involve in planning and execution of plan, and the matching of the wavelength. That means they must be thinking, they may be passionate about the work in an equal measure. Students need to read and choose the doctoral supervisor. It's not that I can just walk to somebody as an MSc student, that I will go and walk to anybody teacher and say I'll do research and it's done. No, because research involvement requires what is personal interest, what is competence, which areas I want to question, and so it's an interest competence of both student as well as supervisor. Unless they match, the work will not come out clear. Because research student is not a mere technical help that okay, any student comes and I can train that person and get work done. Do this, do this, do this. No, a student also has equal involvement in the process. And because student must understand the research strategy, participate in finalization of the modus operandi, how to do the data, what kind of experiments to be done, what kind of analysis to be done. This has to be a two-way process, not just that the supervisor say do this, do this, do this, and student does it and say, okay, this is the data, what do I do with it? No, students also has to be involved in its analysis. And supervisor has the additional responsibility that they have to guide me, they have to steer progress of research, students' research efforts, so that a student doesn't walk randomly in various ways and get lost in the process. That's where supervisor's experience becomes important, to decide what to be done now and what can be done later on by the student when student becomes an independent researcher. Ultimately, a good foundation in ethical practice is essential to prepare quality future researchers and leaders. Unless we train our young students in ethical practices, good practices, they will not become good researchers and leaders. And that's what is important to remember. The other responsibility a supervisor has is to improve writing skills of the student. Students should prepare the first drafts of manuscripts, which the supervisor has to correct, and corrections and modifications the supervisor has done should be explained why this has been done, why this is not the way to write, this is the way to explain, this is the way to present data, and there should be discussion. Student may agree, sometimes student may say, okay, no, I think this is better way. And if the student can convey the supervisor, supervisor should also learn, accept that way, because it's a mutual process. And therefore, supervisor must neither dogmatically impose his or her views on the research student, nor expect the student to get results which fit supervisor's favored hypothesis. No. Research results are primary philosophies to see whether the hypothesis can be proven wrong, not that the hypothesis must be proven correct. If we start research doing that way, we're on the wrong path. Our research must be addressed to see if the hypothesis is wrong. If it's not wrong, it's probably right. That's the way it has to go. So student must be encouraged to have freedom to respectfully disagree. It's not that the student has to fight with supervisor, but can respectfully disagree with supervisor's views that, okay, this is what I understand, this is what supervisor understands. They can discuss and can convince each other, or may respectfully agree to disagree with each other. But it shouldn't lead to kind of a fighting situation. Healthy discussion leads to better planning and better outcome. And therefore, student and supervisor must learn a subject together. It has to be a continual dialogue, to learn from each other through discussions. Sometimes disagreement dispute happens because either the student supervisor's wavelength didn't match, or there was something, somebody was doing something unethical, some misunderstanding happened. They need timely resolution to avoid escalation. And that's why now it's necessary that every PhD student has an advisory committee. This is the law now. So 3-4 faculties, but these advisory committees must actually discuss, meet periodically, assess the work, advise the work. They shouldn't be just signing by circulation, which is, I know, the common practice, but that's again, that practice is again unethical and should not be followed. Doctoral thesis is a candidate's lasting record of work. It's not just, okay, I've earned my PhD degree and who cares for it. It remains available to you, to others for life. And if it is bad, that stigma continues with you, with the student for the whole life. And therefore, it must be done very carefully and must be compiled very carefully. And doctoral thesis should include only the work actually carried out by the scholar. But sometimes it can be necessary that we have to include work by my colleagues in the lab, by collaborators in somewhere else. They can be, because that's what, when a paper is published, there are data from several others. But all of it, if it has been included in the thesis to substantiate something the student has done, then it must be carefully identified and acknowledged that this part of work has been done by so and so, but some of the results are included here to complement the results of one's own study. And this must be very carefully and diligently done. And the whole work must be executed ethically, presented in the thesis following the basic ethical principles, like refraining from plagiarism, manipulation data, and/or images. See, in biological system today, image analysis has become an important point, and thanks to the so many very powerful images program, manipulating images become very easy. And that's one of the major factors. One looks at the retraction list of papers, majority of them are because images were manipulated. This is something that we must learn to avoid very consciously. Okay, now I can have some questions before we go to next step. So maybe we can, the organizers can float some questions if they have come already.
Yes, sir.
Yes, so let me know the questions.
So if audience have any question, they can put it in the chat. Yes, we have a question, sir. Uh, Akshay is asking, should a student pursuing master's degree disseminate the research they conduct as a part of their master's thesis, considering that the research they are interested is original and is an understudied field of study? If so, what would be the most ideal way to disseminate the findings of their studies?
But it should be like any research paper. See, even undergraduate students can be an author in the paper. A school student can be an author in the paper. It's for the supervisor to make sure that the name is included, not just for sake of inclusion. The student has done something, supervisor must not take it as one's own work, but even a school student can be an author. Can be a group of school children, a group of undergraduate students, single master student. Sometimes when a master student can publish. See, for example, if we take the classical case, C.V. Raman never did PhD, never had a supervisor, but he went on to win Nobel Prize. He had students, but he published independently. So it's not that only a PhD student can publish a paper. Anybody who has had a proper training, has contributed something new, can be an author in a paper.
Okay, we'll take next question. Dr. Raghavendra sir asks, sir, what if publishers are taking long time? What is a defined duration?
This is a big problem. Actually, it's, yes, some publishers take long time. Some papers get delayed. There can be two different reasons for this. One is the journal is sloppy. The editors are not working hard. They are just collecting money and publishing something. Second is, which is a general reason, that sometimes finding a reviewer who can review in a given subject can take time. Sometimes reviewers are obtained, but then they don't find time to submit the reviews in time, and therefore the editor has to wait. This brings disrepute to the journal. Most editors will try to find out ways to do it, but sometimes even editor is helpless. So either, in such cases, authors have two options. Either they can ask the editor to take the paper as withdrawn and go to another journal, or can request the editor, and the editor can help in finding ways to expedite it. But those journals which are habitually slow responding, I would not prefer to publish. So one has to keep track of the, actually I'll come to this part later on, how do we choose a journal? I'll come to this part later in my next half.
Thank you, sir. We have one last question. Professor Shankar Bhatt asks, would you please let know the students the nature of penalties for plagiarism?
Well, you see, the nature of penalty, they depend upon institution. They can vary. It depends on, unfortunately, many institutions have no defined penalties. They have no organized system to take care of plagiarism. But then it will depend upon institution, what do they do, and depend upon the degree of plagiarism, how much is established. See, now UGC has come out with a certain set of guidelines. I don't remember all the details, but UGC has issued guidelines about what to do in case of plagiarism for a faculty, for a student, for a master student. It is defined at every level. Now, the problem comes in is if I decide to put a blind eye to such issue of plagiarism, nothing can be done. And that's what unfortunately happens. But what we want more is that every student, every young faculty, senior faculty, research student must be conscious of these ethical practices, so that they cannot unconsciously commit a mistake sometimes because they may not know what plagiarism is. And plagiarism is very well defined. Now actually the rule has become that everything that you submit has to go through a plagiarism check software. That software has its own problem, because software is only looking at certain words being common or not. But ideas, So people have learned paraphrasing, and that's where many of the kind of agency that write papers for you take someone else's ideas, put it in a different word so that software doesn't catch it. Now, this can also be equally bad. So a human brain has to read and understand and finally interpret what is plagiarist, what is not plagiarist, what is idea plagiarist, what is text plagiarist or image plagiarist. Then this has to be carefully worked out. But the nature of penalty, UGC had defined something. I don't remember exactly what its definitions are, but they are available at the UGC website. Each university has been sent this. But then it depends upon the institutions how to deal with individual cases.
Thank you, sir. We can proceed with the talk.
All right. So now this part, I'll talk about our research publication record. Unfortunately, India, with such a large number of researchers in science and other disciplines, internationally is not having very high ranking. That's number one, that's first part, that our own research contribution, barring a few exceptions, is by and large mediocre or less than mediocre. That's one part. Second part is the research journals. India publishes a large number of research journals. But where are we at the international level? Are we competing with international journals that somebody outside India or within India is anxious to publish in a given journal published in India? Unfortunately not. Why is that? Now, there can be multiple reasons for this. I don't think I can go for all of them. But then, only if we make profound discoveries and innovation, we get to higher level. But that profound discovery and innovation demands more of a common sense than state-of-the-art facilities. Very often we complain, okay, I don't have facilities, therefore I can't compete with a scientist sitting in a richer country. It's not just state-of-the-art facility. Now, many places, many institutions, many university departments have very good facilities, but still, why are we not coming to that level? Something wrong in our environment, something wrong in the way we think about it. We become techno-savvy, we become kind of slaves of the facilities, not masters of the facility. We don't ask the right kind of question. So that's more important. For profound discoveries, we need quality education and research in colleges and universities. We need improved facilities. But more important, we need to provide an environment where students, teachers are curious, are driven by their curiosity, then only things will come. The other thing is, much of our research, is it innovative or confirmatory? That means when we write a new paper, do we claim that our results show this thing or reveal this thing, or we simply say, or my results also show or confirm something. If it's the latter part, we are only adding very small component. We are not on the leadership. We are only follower. But if the first part is what we do, then yes, then we are becoming leader. And that's what we need to work on, that we become leaders in that process. But sometimes, even though there are very important discoveries, but by the time our paper is published, we have to say, okay, we also show this because someone else has published. Why someone else has published? Maybe we were running around from one journal to another, and there was a journal holding a manuscript, and therefore it took more time, and some others in a community area publish it. Or sometimes it can also happen that your idea was plagiarized by someone else, and before you could publish, they published. And that's where, in such cases, preprint archives become important. I'll come to this part, what is preprint archives, is an important point that we should think about now. And it's nice to see that more and more scientists in India are also becoming aware of this, and we see more and more papers published in preprint archives. And that's, again, to repeat the same thing, that why we are not leadership, because much of the research work provides only incremental advance of knowledge, since most studies essentially confirm an existing view. That's easier to publish. More difficult is when you do out-of-the-box thinking and your results do not agree with the common ideas. These are more difficult to publish. But that's where it makes a difference. For example, Raman effect. C.V. Raman, when he discovered, was completely against what was ideas about refraction of light, and so on and so forth. But he had the courage, he had that out-of-the-box idea and a common sense, and that is what is more important, that we need to think that we are not just using a technique. Why, how, and what can come out of it must be understood so that we can manipulate, we can make use of the technique for a given question and come out with very important, significant results in the process. The other thing where we have gone wrong, where Indian journals have suffered, is our obsession with impact factor. I'm sure most people who have heard about this. Impact factor is a kind of mathematical calculation about number of articles published in a given journal, a given period of time, and how many of those articles have been cited by others in a given period of time. So it becomes an arithmetic number. In general, yes, a good paper will attract more citations, and therefore a journal which has more citation, we will say, has made more impact in the in that given discipline. But just to be able to publish a paper in a given journal doesn't mean that your paper has also made that impact. And this is what is important. And unfortunately, impact factor has become a numerical number which everybody use. Okay, a journal with an impact factor of 6 is better than a journal impact factor of 5. Now, this is wrong idea that we have. What makes an impact is the quality of the data, quality of the finding that you are publishing. Because impact factor can depend upon the area, how many people are working there, whether your area is in the fashionable area in the contemporary time, or you are working in an area which is very few people are working, or few people are interested, and therefore there are many citations, but you can make an important discovery. So impact factor, in recent years, there are more and more people talking that we should say no to impact factor. So there was a called DORA declaration from San Francisco in 2012 or so. We said we say no to impact factor, and I think we all must follow that very. When we publish and what we publish should not be compulsory that I must publish in this journal. See, today funding agencies are asking how many papers are published in international journal on impact factor. I think this is wrong. The only compulsion should be that we do not publish in a predatory or bogus journal. But any other journal which has a good publication policy, which has good peer reviewing, should be available for us to publish. The impact factor has created lots of problems, because just to say impact factor 5 is better than impact factor 4 is illogical. Depends upon journal, depends upon the area, which area is good today, which area may be good tomorrow. They can differ, and something that has good impact factor today may not have good impact factor tomorrow. And so just by going arithmetic matrices can be misleading, and as I actually destroy the pleasure of research. We do research to find something to share with others. But because I want to publish in this journal, I have to manipulate, I have to modify my research in a certain way, not out of curiosity, but out of compulsion, and that's bad. And therefore, many of us have been saying this, that those sitting in judgment chairs who depend on impact factor must change their outlook. They cannot take impact factor alone as a mathematical arithmetic number to say that somebody's impact factor being, total impact factor being 200 is better than somebody's impact factor being 150. Maybe 150 has many more significant contribution. So the quality must be assessed, not the quantity alone. Now, this is one question, that how do we select a journal for submission manuscript? Where should we submit a manuscript? One is the credibility of the journal and reputation of the journal, how well it is known in a given field. What kind of papers are published in that journal? Not necessarily by established scientists only, but what's the quality of the publication, that findings that are reported in that journal? Is it likely to be read by fellow workers who are working in that area? Are they likely to read it? Although this becomes today less important in the internet era. Anything published anywhere is available on the net, and search engines will find it out. Google will find out almost anything anywhere. And so something not being available to fellow workers is not a question that really exists today. Now, choosing the journal, you have to decide whether you have written a review. a long paper, a short research article, a letter, a commentary, because different journals have different kind of sections. Some journals do not publish reviews. Some journals do not publish original research articles, and so on and so forth. So one has to choose what kind of manuscript one is preparing and thereby decide which journal will be more appropriate. Now, this is important point. Most journals today now give date of receipt of a manuscript and date of acceptance and date of publication. If you think barring one or two manuscripts have taken a long time, others are processed in a reasonable time. Now, this reasonable time can vary from weeks to months. In current internet era where everything is online, the reviewing is online, the publication is online, generally your manuscript should be processed. After submission, you should get review results within 3 to 4 weeks. Most of the journals give reviewer only 10 or 14 days to review. If they don't, they are reminded. And so we expect that in 4 or 5 weeks, the first review results should be available. If they come back for revision, authors, the editors give you a certain time, 30 days or 40 days, depending on the kind of review that is required. And then it again goes for review. So typically 3 to 6 months is a good time between submission to publication. Sometimes it can get longer because the reviewers are sitting, or because the authors have to do many more revisions, many more experiments, and therefore that can go. So if you look at the journal's history of publications, if an average is quick, then that's a better journal. But if it's very quick, that okay, you submit a manuscript today and most of them are published next week, I would be very concerned about that journal. That's most likely a predatory journal where they publish anything. But nobody can guarantee a review within a week's time. So that's the too fast a publication, too slow a publication. Both are issues that should raise red flags to decide whether to submit or not submit. What quality of articles have been published in the journal? Are they something that you would like to read? You enjoy reading them, or something very ordinary which you think many people may not like to read? Then, if I think my paper is good, I would not go to that journal. And we generally suggest that journals that are published by learned academies, societies, universities, and with a good peer review system, they should be preferred, rather than journals that are purely published by commercial agencies. Because we expect that these academic institutions run journals will have more academic way of looking at it rather than purely from the profit-making point of view. This is another thing that has happened in more recent times, that because many authors cannot read a paper, so publishers are charging authors to pay what they call as open access charges, so that if you paid, your paper will be available to anyone for reading. I think this is completely wrong. In my view, this is completely wrong. Authors must not pay to the reader to read a paper. No, that shouldn't be done. Instead, we should be able to share PDF files, because that's much easier today in the internet era. Almost everyone has email address. Each author has an email address. Each reader has an email address. And all that you need to do is just send an email to the author. Please send me a PDF file of your work. And in 90% or 100% cases, it should come. Unfortunately, some authors believe that sharing PDF file is a violation of copyright. It's not. Sharing PDF to fellow researchers who have no commercial interest in your paper is absolutely not prohibited by copyright. And so the authors must be ready to share PDF file. The readers must be ready to request the author a PDF file. And that's for that you don't need to be a subscriber. And then this practice, not only in India, this practice exists in many countries. National journal, international journal. It's absolutely wrong, unethical, and insulting. We have written about it, and we have been requesting funding agencies to not to differentiate. So they still continue, but we need to make a public movement that such discrimination must not be made. A journal is a journal, and it's readable. Today, it's readable anywhere in the world. A paper published, a journal published from a small town in India, if it's on internet, is available anywhere in the world. Now, this preprint archive is something that is very, very exciting and very interesting. These are journals that have been started by certain agencies, established agencies, which are preprint. That means they are author submitted manuscripts, but they are not undergone a peer review, and therefore they are called preprint. They are not formal publications, but just author wants to make the community aware of the new finding. These are without any charges to author or reader. They have eternal free open access. That means once it is put on the preprint archive web server, it's available forever. You can't withdraw it, because if you just want to put something on the open archive and say claim something, and 2 years later or 6 months later say, okay, something was wrong, I withdraw, you cannot withdraw it because it's available, it cannot be withdrawn. And therefore, if somebody had done a wrong practice, it will be available for eternity for others to identify the wrong practice. But the advantage of this is that these becomes available to everyone immediately. Typically, good preprint archives submit a manuscript today, but tomorrow they are available to the entire community as you are submitted. The only thing that will check is there is no obvious plagiarism, there is no obvious malpractice or something, they will publish it. The responsibility is of the author and the readers to decide whether it's proper or not. One important advantage of this is that prevents against idea plagiarism. Say in typical publication, it may take from weeks to months for peer review. And during that time, some unscrupulous peer reviewers may steal your ideas. The editor may steal your ideas, or somebody else who knows that idea may steal idea and publish something with your idea, and you then get to a state where you have to say, we also did it. Now, once you put in your ideas in preprint, you can always claim that on this particular day already we have given this idea, and therefore the ownership of all that idea remains yours. And that's why it's much more advantageous for making use of preprint archives. And fortunately, most journals now accept manuscripts which are published in preprint archives as fresh submission. There's no plagiarism issues coming in here. Even in India now, these are being accepted by funding agencies, that what you published in preprint archive can be, you can claim that this is what you discovered. And so they not only, as I said, claim for priority, but also facilitate informed feedback, because this is another advantage. The reader can put a note on the preprint, just as you write blogs, you write comments on YouTube or anywhere. On preprint archives, the reader can put a comment, whether something is wrong, something is missing, something is good, or some addition from it there, so that when the authors finally prepare the manuscript for peer review of journals, they can take advantage of those comments and they can improve the quality of the publication. Now, the next question is, why India tops in predatory journals? What are predatory journals? It's very difficult to define, but basically predatory journals are those which publish anything for money. The author pays certain amount of money, and the editor gets it, and anything is published without a serious peer review. And at last count, maybe things have become better now or worse, I don't know. But about a few years ago, India contributed to about 27% of predatory journals published across the world, being the top most in number of quantities. Why did this happen? Why people have written, I also written several articles where we have tried to analyze why this has happened. And these are misconceived ideas and misimplemented assessment tools that we created this, because one is money is available now for research publication, because it has become an industry. If I'm publishing a journal, I can earn money. So I'm publishing a journal not for academic purpose, but for commercial gains. And that is one of the reasons why this kind of practices happen. The other is, we insist on a certain number of published papers. Till recently, the PhD student must have 2 papers before submitting thesis. Now, sometimes publication takes time. So how do you get 2 number? You publish somewhere else, give money, have 2 number, and the office is satisfied that you have 2 papers. And this open access charges was because this practice are already started. So the unscrupulous publishers found it very easy. The scientists, the researchers are willing to pay charges and therefore start journals. And this has been the reason. And I'll be quick now because I think my time is running out. Will quickly say that these articles are available on my ResearchGate page and so on, or public anywhere you can read it. That the payment basis for publication is the beginning of predatory publications and predatory practices, and that should be avoided at any cost. And UGC, fortunately, now has taken some steps, although not complete steps. What UGC has done is the quantitative parameters in API score is very damaging. I hope they are changing their practices. But with respect to journals, UGC has set up this office, Consortium of Academic Research and Ethics, which keep on looking at journals, whether these are good journals, bad journals, whether their publication should be countable or not. And one can look at this point, this web page for more details. And Indian journals are suffering because of us only. Our established scientists do not wish to publish Indian journals, do not wish to recognize what is published in Indian journals because they think it's poor quality, and therefore this vicious circle continues to keep Indian journals poor. And this is something what our suggestion is: promote good journals in India, not by making it mandatory to publish in journals, but to publish also in good journals that are published in India. That's something must, but do not publish in predatory bogus journals. Say no to publication charges, especially the open access charges. Many Indian journals published by academies, by established societies, and no such charges. And I would always prefer to publish in such journals than they have to require open access charges. I am not publishing any article, any paper where I have to pay charges. I will not do that. That's what one has to take a decision. As C.V. Raman believed, flourishing of quality journals in India is a must for our leadership in science. That's why he started Current Science. Unfortunately, we have forgotten that, and therefore, no Indian journals ranks internationally to any other standard journal, which is unfortunate. And we must work to improve this quality. In fact, one of the ways that this can be done is, like I have been publishing since beginning of my career in 71, alternate papers in a journal outside India, another one in India. Obviously, my impact factor has been very low, total impact factor. And so one of the interviewer asked me, what happens if you choose to ignore impact factor? Did you suffer? And this was my answer. I have not suffered, and I'm happy that I've maintained almost 50-50 ratio in my publication in journals published in so-called national and international journals. And I can share with you all that papers published in Indian journals, which are published in India, have received often much more citation and attention than those published in so-called high impact factor journals. So it's not that impact factor is more important. What is important is the quality of science, quality of research that you're publishing. That will attract people to cite your paper, whether published in so-called national journal or so-called international journal. And therefore, academies have come out with certain guidelines how to assess, and the main point was what rather than where published should be considered. What is the impact of the publication? Indian National Science Academy took the lead, and all academies are agreed to this, and this guidelines is available. So the main point is that if you want to improve the quality of research and innovation, it should be passion, not fashion or compulsion. I don't do research because my friend does it or because I'm required to do research to my promotion. No. Research is being done because something inside you is burning you, is making you impatient to find out. And that's where good research will happen. Major advance happens when research do not agree with the expected. This is important. If you find something which is expected, you've not made any advance. Only when you find that, okay, something which is expected doesn't happen, you have made a new idea, and that happens out of the box ideas and common sense. They can be very important. And this, I draw attention to this book published by Indian National Science Academy, available on the web, Indian Inside web page, free. It considers many issues. Now, of course, government agencies will come out with ethics for research, ethics for teaching, and so on. So I hope that in coming few years, we will have much more ethical practices being followed than what it is now. Now we are known more for unethical practices than for ethical practices, and I think we need to change to the better situation now. So this is one important point from biology and evolution, that one of the many unique three qualities of man, the new sort of animal, that he is the only ethical animal. No other animal think of ethics. It's only human animal that thinks of ethics, and therefore ethical need is fulfilled also products of evolution, but they are introduced in man alone, and let's respect it. Thank you all. I'll take questions now.
Thank you, sir. We have one question by Santosh.
Yes.
Suppose we are working in a field where there will be already established scientists. After submitting our paper, it goes to one of them for review. Now,
Yes.
will there be a problem that we have not cited their work in our paper, and there are chances that they will hold our paper for longer time? How to deal with these kind of problems in future?
Well, yes, that's where you see the reviewers also have ethical guidelines issued. They should follow that. But if a reviewer is deliberately holding, that's unethical. And that's where one of the precautions that's now available is preprint archive. You put your results on the preprint so that if the reviewer or somebody wants to steal your ideas, you can always claim that you had already put these ideas in your preprint. And that's where the importance of preprint is becoming more and more, and that should be followed. That gives you protection against idea plagiarism, but claiming your idea. Because another thing that happens is when the reviewer writes, reviewer may not agree to your interpretation, and in the process, in the bargain for publication, you may have to mellow down your interpretation. You may have to completely remove that interpretation, and then you lose the priority of your claim. But if you have put that interpretation in your preprint archive, published paper, you can always say that you had stated this already, and therefore the right, the ownership is yours. And that's one precaution that advantage that preprint archives gives. If somebody is unethical, there's no law which we can take recourse to. We may not go to that journal again. We can write to the editor, and they can sometimes act upon, but it's something that we cannot guarantee that this will not happen again. Its only question is how many people are following the ethical practices.
Thank you, sir. If anybody has any questions, they can unmute themselves and ask. Or you can also drop that in the chat box so that we can moderate that.
Good afternoon, Subhash. Professor Rangnath here.
Yeah, good to see you.
Nice. So, I have sent a message on the chat box. It is a day for introspection now. Introspection for all of us, because what you have shared, your experience of last 5 decades, whatever crystallized in your mind today or sometime back, is an experience what you have had with both pleasure and pain to see what's happening in science. It is a reflection of your 5 decades experience, and it's excellent. And in fact, in my chat box, I have suggested that universities must have a mandatory course on the topic of whatever you suggested to all the PhD students. Now, there is no such mandatory course. If it all depends on different universities. Now, one mandatory course must be given to all the PhD scholars.
Now it is mandatory. UGC had made it mandatory that every PhD student, not only in science, in every discipline, must take a course in ethics. This is made mandatory now.
Not only ethics, so many things you have shared today, including publication.
But this course, which has been defined by UGC, had all these issues also listed about publication.
No, the university, in many cases, what happens, as you know, UGC recommends, but universities may not adopt it. So my address was only to the universities to design a course, and it should be mandatory for all the students. That's why it's an excellent idea. Sir,
in principle, it is mandatory, but if we don't follow it, then there's a problem.
Okay, so only one thing, sir. The there's an article from you, research and innovation in universities. You also presented today. My only request is, why only universities? Research and innovation in all institutions of higher education, including institutions of national importance.
Well, yes. I mean, that's what I said, higher education institutions. That includes research labs also, research institutions also. But
that's right.
Yeah.
So recently I wrote an article to Current Science, and the editor tells me, why you are including all institutions? You include only state universities. I said, no. Whether it's state universities, a center, or any research institution, they have to follow these things. No, others are doing everything, but what all you are pointing is only for state universities. See how the perception is different.
Yes, that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
We need the same yardstick for same facility, same yardstick for every university, every institution. Yes.
Yes. Thanks, Subhash, for sharing your vast experience in 1.5 hours. Excellent. Thanks. As I wrote you, Yuvaraja is my alma mater. I graduated from this college 69. Thanks for coming.
I'm glad that Sachin found me out and asked me to speak, and I'm happy to have done that. Thanks for this opportunity.
So this is how technology has helped us. Otherwise, if you want to bring you physically to give you talk and all, take a time at your disposal, so many things would have happened. Today, technology in a way, it is helping us to bring people like us, people like you to campuses where it should be.
Technology and next COVID-19.
Excellent. I also congratulate Devaki and his team for taking this exercise. Thank you, sir.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Hello.
I request Professor Shankar Bhatt to add a note for all of us.
Good afternoon, Professor Lakhotia. Thank you for your excellent talk. I have a small question, rather a clarification. People speak for quality publication, but many a time the quantity overtakes quality. What is your comment, please?
Well, you see, this is where I said that those who sit in the judgment chair must change their mindset. They must look for quality. That's what the guidelines that we frame for assessment absolutely emphasize that it's the quality that is important, not quantity. But then human brain, the human mind, the human feelings and human philosophy, the law of thermodynamics takes everywhere. We tend to get to disorder, tend to get to the least path of resistance and thereby take a decision. But we have to be conscious, we have to be careful, and we need to point out where some things are there. See, a major problem in our country has happened is most of us don't speak. We just say, what can we do? We must speak out. We must learn to make our ideas be expressed publicly and clearly. Then only things will change. Otherwise, if everybody says, okay, it's not my domain, it's the expert that did, this person did it. But I know it's not very easy, but we need to make effort on that.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I request Professor N.B. Ramchandra sir to add a note.
Thank you, Professor Lakhotia sir, for a nice talk, and which is very much needed for our all faculty and the students, also young researcher now. And we have a number of the journals where overnight they publish and they submit the thesis also. We are concerned more about that. And this talk is really, eye-opening for all the faculty. I would rather say faculty rather than the research students. If the guides are more stringent, then things will work a little more better than this. So more discipline in the research and publication will be there, sir. Thank you for your, as Professor Rangnath said, our vast knowledge. You are the Bhishma of our science in India. I've seen you from the day one where I joined my masters, even today we are interacting, and thank you for your guidance, sir.
Well, I don't want to bitch. I want to be worker as you are.
Yes, sir. Yes. We are also, we are also working, and we are concerned what the kind of work you are doing, and it's really eye-opening for all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ramchandra sir. Now we have one question. Shreyas asks, not just universities, also industries and even students go with job-ready mindset. How can we overcome it, and how is it impacting India's science output?
You see, it's something that we need to look at. It has a deeper consequence and deeper reasons for this. We prepare our children right from their young age to look for a job, to look for salary, look for something. Yes, everybody cannot be an intellectual, everybody cannot be a researcher. And that's where right from school to college, we need to promote in higher education only those who are interested in higher education. And higher education doesn't only mean that you do a PhD and become academic. There can be industrial openings, there can be other openings. Now job opportunities are becoming very, very different. And fortunately, that kind of avenues are becoming available, that kind of training, that kind of analysis is being available now. And I think the students should also be careful that they just do not follow the flock, like a flock of sheep. If they want to do PhD, they must ask themselves, are they really interested in research? Or they are just wanting a degree? And same thing applies for super. So it's, not just one factor which is positive for the present situation. We need to look at it in totality, and somewhere the circle has to be broken. And the best thing to break circle is the parents, the children, and the teachers who can explain at every level what is the best path for student. I won't say that anybody, because they've done PhD, MSc must do a PhD, and because they've done a PhD, therefore must become a postdoctoral or become something. No. At some point, they can decide to take a different path if they enjoy that. Because that's an important point to understand. That what one enjoys, if we have a crowd continuing like this, we'll continue with the present situation as we are. We are not going to change it. We need to change the entire scenario in with a very clear understanding as to what is required and what should be done.
Thank you, sir. I request all participants to note that there is a feedback link put in the chat box. Kindly fill it, and e-certificates will be mailed to all those who fill this feedback form. And now I request Dr. N.S. Devaki to add a note addressing all of us.
Thank you, Sachin. Respected Professor Lakhotia, we are honored by your address to our academic fraternity consisting of students, teaching faculty. Thank you very much, sir. We are so happy that some of our well-wishers, Professor H. A. Ranganath, Professor Shankar Bhatt, Professor M.B. Ramchandra, and other senior faculty have joined here and then became a part of our memorable one and having very high impact. Professor Lakhotia's webinar covered many relevant aspects towards research. It included the curiosity, which is so important for all of us.
The link is broken, or
Devaki, we can't hear. Concluded? We can't hear now.
Now?
Yeah, now.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So we are so grateful to Professor Lakhotia for having agreed for our request, and that happened mainly through our student Sachin Swami and his team. And I'm so deeply grateful to sir because with the students' request, he readily agreed, and then he addressed all of us. That is a very grateful criteria, what I can say. Thank you so much, sir. Lakhotia, sir. And then the inclusiveness of so many aspects of research like curiosity, inclusiveness, originality, self-satisfaction of research, social responsibility, what we have towards the society, wealth generation, and research papers and type of authorship, what has to be followed, the rules what we have to follow, and then the maintenance of logbook, importance of maintenance of logbook in research, and then the impact factor, the damage of impact factor, that was a very touching one, because many of us just feel that, oh, we don't have such an impact factor paper, because we are in agriculture research field. So many times what happens in the medicine field, whoever does the research, their paper has got lot of impact factor because of the reference many people do, and because of the number of researchers who are involved in such research activities. So you have defeatingly touched our heart actually to give the importance of research content rather than the impact factor. That is very great thing, sir, from your thought actually. Then ethics, you have given the full depth in this particular field. That is also very, very apt for the present generation. And we all have to follow that one, including seniors and juniors. And with this one, we are really blessed to have your lecture, sir, which has really given a lot of impact for us. And one more small note I would like to add over here for the importance, whatever you have given here. Like when the students come here to our college seeking admission to 5-year integrated MSc molecular biology, many of the parents and students ask one question to us: what is the scope for your subject? Then I will be telling them, see, this is a research-oriented course. Students will first enjoy how to just go for the passion towards research. So when they have that passion for research, everything will follow them. So that you are not going to follow job, you are going to follow knowledge and inquisitiveness and then happiness which comes out of your study, which is an in-depth course where all the facets of biology you are able to understand. When you understand that way, you are able to have more and more inquisitiveness, more and more questions you can ask regarding research and etc. And later, the job and opportunities and money will be behind you. You should not go behind that one, but your knowledge and science, which will be very important, and behind that one, your job and money should follow. So many students and parents do agree with me, and then they come for this. I should thank Professor Ranganatha, H.A. Ranganath and team for introducing the course of higher integrated MSc molecular biology in our college, which has really given a lot of impact to the society. Our students now are distributed in different countries, different institutes of our country, and they are in different industries, pharmaceutical industries, and they have actually brought laurels to our college. So just now, the present final year MSc students who have got cleared the UGC CSIR examination already joined CCMB for his PhD program. So likewise, 3 students of the present final year itself, they have joined the institute already. Now their results are yet to be out. So the knowledge what they have gained, the interest in which they are doing the course, that is for research, that has helped our students to a great extent. And your talk also added to the one whatever we are doing here. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for all the professors for the support what you have given, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Bye to all.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you. There is a small announcement which is going to be made by our student for another activity of our department, sir. Thank you. So he is going to announce one competition, a poster competition, which is related to antibiotic stewardship program in which our students are working, sir. So he's going to make a small announcement. Yeah, from Sachi, please.
So, thank you all. And we are happy to announce that we are now a part of this Aspic Clubs network, which comes under React Asia Pacific, working in creating awareness regarding antimicrobial resistance and public health in India. And we have organized an online poster competition for students regarding antimicrobial resistance. So we request all of the students and faculty members to circulate this among your students so that there's a large participation and awareness regarding AMR is created. And this is a theme-based competition where the poster has to be designed based on any of the following themes, which can be submitted through a Google form. So the last date for submission of the posters is 23rd of October. And if you have any queries regarding this competition, you can contact the phone numbers or the mail ID being displayed. Thank you.
Thank you all.
And finally, I would like to personally thank Professor S.C. Lakhotia for responding to all of my emails and spending his time with us, and for the great lecture. And also, I thank him on behalf of Department of Molecular Biology, Yuvaraja's College. And also, I thank many of the professors from University of Mysore who joined us for this session. And thank you all for